For material enjoyment there is no need to approach the demigods. The demigods are but servants of the Lord. As such, they are duty-bound to supply necessities of life in the form of water, light, air, etc. One should work hard and worship the Supreme Lord by the fruits of one's hard labor for existence, and that should be the motto of life. One should be careful to execute occupational service with faith in God in the proper way, and that will lead one gradually on the progressive march back to Godhead. Lord Sri Krishna, when he was personally present at Vrajadama, stopped the worship of the demigod Indra and advised the residents of Vraja to worship by their business and to have faith in God. Worshipping the multi-demigods for material gain is practically a perversity of religion. This sort of religious activity has been condemned in the very beginning of the Bhagavatam as Kaitava Dharma. There is only one religion in the world to be followed by one and all, and that is the Bhagavata Dharma, or the religion which teaches one to worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and no one else. Texts 28 to 29. In the revealed scriptures, the ultimate object of knowledge is Sri Krishna, the personality of Godhead. The purpose of performing sacrifice is to please him. Yoga is for realizing him. All fruitive activities are ultimately rewarded by him only. He is supreme knowledge, and all severe austerities are performed to know him. Religion, dharma, is rendering loving service unto him. He is the supreme goal of life. Purport: that Sri Krishna, the personality of Godhead, is the only object of worship, is confirmed in these two slokas. In the Vedic literature there is the same objective, establishing one's relationship and ultimately reviving our lost loving service unto him. That is the sum and substance of the Vedas. In the Bhagavad Gita, the same theory is confirmed by the Lord in his own words. The ultimate purpose of the Vedas is to know him only. All the revealed scriptures are prepared by the Lord through his incarnation in the body of Srila Vyasadeva, just to remind the fallen souls, conditioned by material nature, of Sri Krishna, the personality of Godhead. No demigod can award freedom from material bondage. That is the verdict of all the Vedic literatures. Impersonalists who have no information of the personality of Godhead minimize the omnipotency of the Supreme Lord and put him on equal footing with all other living beings. And for this act, such impersonalists get freedom from material bondage only with great difficulty. They can surrender unto him only after many, many births in the culture of transcendental knowledge. One may argue that the Vedic activities are based on sacrificial ceremonies. That is true, but all such sacrifices are also meant for realizing the truth about Vasudeva. Another name of Vasudeva is yajna, sacrifice, and in the Bhagavad Gita it is clearly stated that all sacrifices and all activities are to be conducted for the satisfaction of yajna, or Vishnu, the personality of Godhead. This is the case also with the yoga systems. Yoga means to get into touch with the Supreme Lord. The process, however, includes several bodily features, such as asana, dhyana, pranayama, and meditation, and all of them are meant for concentrating upon the localized aspect of Vasudeva, represented as Paramatma. Paramatma realization is but partial realization of Vasudeva, and if one is successful in that attempt, one realizes Vasudeva in full. But by ill luck, most yogis are stranded by the powers of mysticism achieved through the bodily process. Ill-fated yogis are given a chance in the next birth by being placed in the families of good learned brahmanas or in the families of rich merchants in order to execute the unfinished task of Vasudeva realization. If such fortunate brahmanas and sons of rich men properly utilize the chance, they can easily realize Vasudeva by good association with saintly persons. Unfortunately, such preferred persons are captivated again by material wealth and honor, and thus they practically forget the aim of life. This is also so for the culture of knowledge. According to Bhagavad Gita, there are 18 items in culturing knowledge. By such culture of knowledge, one becomes gradually prideless, devoid of vanity, non-violent, forbearing, simple, devoted to the great spiritual master, and self-controlled. By culture of knowledge, one becomes unattached to the hearth and home and becomes conscious of the miseries due to death, birth, old age, and disease, and all culture of knowledge culminates in devotional service to the personality of Godhead, Vasudeva. Therefore, Vasudeva is the ultimate aim in culturing all different branches of knowledge. Culture of knowledge leading one to the transcendental plane of meeting Vasudeva is real knowledge. Physical knowledge in its various branches is condemned in the Bhagavad Gita as ajnana, or the opposite of real knowledge. The ultimate aim of physical knowledge is to satisfy the senses, which means prolongation of the term of material existence, and thereby continuance of the threefold miseries. So prolonging the miserable life of material existence is nescience. But the same physical knowledge leading to the way of spiritual understanding helps one to end the miserable life of physical existence and to begin the life of spiritual existence on the plane of Vasudeva. The same applies to all kinds of austerities. Tapasya means voluntary acceptance of bodily pains to achieve some higher end of life. Ravana and Hiranyaksipu underwent a severe type of bodily torture to achieve the end of sense gratification. Sometimes modern politicians also undergo severe types of austerities to achieve some political end. This is not actually tapasya. One should accept voluntary bodily inconvenience for the sake of knowing Vasudeva, because that is the way of real austerities. Otherwise, all forms of austerities are classified as modes of passion and ignorance. Passion and ignorance cannot end the miseries of life. Only the mode of goodness can mitigate the threefold miseries of life. Vasudeva and Devaki, the so-called father and mother of Lord Krishna, underwent penances to get Vasudeva as their son. Lord Sri Krishna is the father of all living beings, Bhagavad Gita 14.4. Therefore he is the original living being of all other living beings. He is the original eternal enjoyer amongst all other enjoyers. Therefore no one can be his begetting father, as the ignorant may think. Lord Sri Krishna agreed to become the son of Vasudeva and Devaki upon being pleased with their severe austerities. Therefore, if any austerities have to be done, they must be done to achieve the end of knowledge, Vasudeva. Vasudeva is the original personality of Godhead, Lord Sri Krishna. As explained before, the original personality of Godhead expands himself by innumerable forms. Such expansion of forms is made possible by his various energies. His energies are also multifarious, and his internal energies are superior and external energies inferior in quality. They are explained in the Bhagavad Gita 7.4.6 as the para and the apara prakritis. So his expansions of various forms, which take place via the internal energies, are superior forms, whereas the expansions which take place via the external energies are inferior forms. The living entities are also his expansions. The living entities who are expanded by his internal potency are eternally liberated persons, whereas those who are expanded in terms of the material energies are eternally conditioned souls. Therefore, all culture of knowledge, austerities, sacrifice, and activities should be aimed at changing the quality of the influence that is acting upon us. For the present, we are all being controlled by the external energy of the Lord. And just to change the quality of the influence, we must endeavor to cultivate spiritual energy. In the Bhagavad Gita, it is said that those who are Mahatmas, or those whose minds have been so broadened as to be engaged in the service of Lord Krishna, are under the influence of the internal potency, and the effect is that such broad-minded living beings are constantly engaged in the service of the Lord without deviation. That should be the aim of life, and that is the verdict of all the Vedic literatures. No one should bother himself with fruitive activities or dry speculation without transcendental knowledge. Everyone should at once engage himself in the transcendental loving service of the Lord, nor should one worship different demigods who work as different hands of the Lord for creation, maintenance, or destruction of the material world. There are innumerable powerful demigods who look over the external management of the material world. They are all different assisting hands of Lord Vasudeva. Even Lord Shiva and Lord Brahma are included in the list of demigods, but Lord Vishnu or Vasudeva is always transcendentally situated. Even though he accepts the quality of goodness of the material world, he is still transcendental to all the material modes. The following example will clear that matter more explicitly. In the prison house, there are the prisoners and the managers of the prison house. Both the managers and the prisoners are bound by the laws of the king. But even though the king sometimes comes in the prison, he is not bound by the laws of the prison house. The king is therefore always transcendental to the laws of the prison house, as the Lord is always transcendental to the laws of the material world. Text 30. In the beginning of the material creation, that absolute personality of Godhead, Vasudeva, in his transcendental position, created the energies of cause and effect by his own internal energy. Purport. The position of the Lord is always transcendental because the causal and effectual energies required for the creation of the material world were also created by him. He is unaffected, therefore, by the qualities of the material modes. His existence, form, activities, and paraphernalia all existed before the material creation. He is all spiritual and has nothing to do with the qualities of the material world, which are qualitatively distinct from the spiritual qualities of the Lord. Text 31. After creating the material substance, the Lord, Vasudeva, expands himself and enters into it, and although he is within the material modes of nature and appears to be one of the created beings, he is always fully enlightened in his transcendental position. Purport. The living entities are separated parts and parcels of the Lord, and the conditioned living entities, who are unfit for the spiritual kingdom, are strewn within the material world to enjoy matter to the fullest extent. As Paramatma and eternal friend of the living entities, the Lord, by one of his plenary portions, accompanies the living entities to guide them in their material enjoyment and to become witness to all activities. While the living entities enjoy the material conditions, the Lord maintains his transcendental position without being affected by the material atmosphere. In the Vedic literatures, Shruti, it is said that there are two birds in one tree. One of them is eating the fruit of the tree, while the other is witnessing the actions. The witness of the Lord and the fruit eater is the living entity. The fruit eater, living entity, has gotten his real identity and is overwhelmed in the fruitive activities of the material conditions, but the Lord, Paramatma, is always full of transcendental knowledge. That is the difference between the supersoul and the conditioned soul. The conditioned soul, the living entity, is controlled by the laws of nature, while the Paramatma, or the supersoul, is the controller of the material energy. Text 32. The Lord, as Supersoul, pervades all things, just as fire permeates wood, and so he appears to be of many varieties, though he is the absolute one without a second. Purport. Lord Vasudeva, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, by one of his plenary parts, expands himself all over the material world, and his existence can be perceived even within the atomic energy. Matter, antimatter, proton, neutron, etc., are all different effects of the Paramatma feature of the Lord. As from wood, fire can be manifested, or as butter can be churned out of milk, so also the presence of the Lord as Paramatma can be felt by the process of legitimate hearing and chanting of the transcendental subjects, which are especially treated in the Vedic literatures like the Upanishads and Vedanta. Srimad Bhagavatam is the bona fide explanation of these Vedic literatures. The Lord can be realized through the oral reception of the transcendental message, and that is the only way to experience the transcendental subject. As fire is kindled from wood by another fire, the divine consciousness of man can similarly be kindled by another divine grace. His divine grace, the spiritual master, can kindle the spiritual fire from the wood-like living entity by imparting proper spiritual messages injected through the receptive ear. Therefore, one is required to approach the proper spiritual master with receptive ears only, and thus divine existence is gradually realized. The difference between animality and humanity lies in this process only. A human being can hear properly, whereas an animal cannot. Text 33. The Supersoul enters into the bodies of the created beings, who are influenced by the modes of material nature, and causes them to enjoy the effects of these modes by the subtle mind. Purport. There are 8,400,000 species of living beings, beginning from the highest intellectual being, Brahma, down to the insignificant ant, and all of them are enjoying the material world according to the desires of the subtle mind and gross material body. The gross material body is based on the conditions of the subtle mind, and the senses are created according to the desire of the living being. The Lord as Paramatma helps the living being to get material happiness because the living being is helpless in all respects in obtaining what he desires. He proposes and the Lord disposes. In another sense, the living beings are parts and parcels of the Lord. They are themselves one with the Lord. In the Bhagavad Gita, the living persons in all varieties of bodies have been claimed by the Lord as his sons. The sufferings and enjoyments of the sons are indirectly the sufferings and enjoyments of the Father. Still, the Father is not in any way affected directly by the suffering and enjoyment of the sons. He is so kind that he constantly remains with the living being as Paramatma and always tries to convert the living being towards the real happiness. Text 34. Thus the Lord of the universes maintains all planets inhabited by demigods, men, and lower animals. Assuming the roles of incarnations, he performs pastimes to reclaim those in the mode of pure goodness. Purport. There are innumerable material universes, and in each and every universe there are innumerable planets inhabited by different grades of living entities in different modes of nature. The Lord Vishnu incarnates himself in each and every one of them and in each and every type of living society. He manifests his transcendental pastimes amongst them just to create the desire to go back to Godhead. The Lord does not change his original transcendental position, but he appears to be differently manifested according to the particular time, circumstances, and society. Sometimes he incarnates himself or empowers a suitable living being to act for him, but in either case the purpose is the same. The Lord wants the suffering living being to go back home, back to Godhead. The happiness which the living beings are hankering for is not to be found within any corner of the innumerable universes and material planets. The eternal happiness which the living being wants is obtainable in the kingdom of God, but the forgetful living beings, under the influence of the material modes, have no information of the kingdom of God. The Lord therefore comes to propagate the message of the kingdom of God, either personally as an incarnation or through his bona fide representative as the good Son of God. Such incarnations or sons of God are not making propaganda for going back to Godhead only within the human society. Their work is also going on in all types of societies, amongst demigods and those other than human beings. Thus ends the Bhaktivedanta portions of the first canto, second chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled Divinity and Divine Service. Chapter 3. Krishna is the source of all incarnations. Text 1. Sutta said, in the beginning of the creation, the Lord first expanded himself in the universal form of the Purusha incarnation and manifested all the ingredients for the material creation. And thus at first there was the creation of the 16 principles of material action. This was for the purpose of creating the material universe. Purport. The Bhagavad Gita states that the personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, maintains these material universes by extending his plenary expansions. So this Purusha form is the confirmation of the same principle. The original personality of Godhead, Vasudeva, or Lord Krishna, who is famous as the son of King Vasudeva or King Nanda, is full with all opulences, all potencies, all fame, all beauty, all knowledge, and all renunciation. Part of his opulences are manifested as impersonal Brahman, and part of his opulences are manifested as Paramatma. This Purusha feature of the same personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, is the original Paramatma manifestation of the Lord. There are three Purusha features in the material creation, and this form, who is known as the Karanodakasai Vishnu, is the first of the three. The others are known as the Garbhodakasai Vishnu and the Ksirodakasai Vishnu, which we shall know one after another. The innumerable universes are generated from the skin holes of this Karanodakasai Vishnu, and in each one of the universes the Lord enters as Garbhodakasai Vishnu. In the Bhagavad Gita, it is also mentioned that the material world is created at certain intervals and then again destroyed. This creation and destruction is done by the supreme will because of the conditioned souls, or the Nityabhata living beings. The Nityabhata, or the eternally conditioned souls, have the sense of individuality, or ahankara, which dictates them sense enjoyment, which they are unable to have constitutionally. The Lord is the only enjoyer, and all others are enjoyed. The living beings are predominated enjoyers, but the eternally conditioned souls, forgetful of this constitutional position, have strong aspirations to enjoy. The chance to enjoy matter is given to the conditioned souls in the material world, and side by side they are given the chance to understand their real constitutional position. Those fortunate living entities who catch the truth and surrender unto the lotus feet of Vasudeva after many, many births in the material world, join the eternally liberated souls, and thus are allowed to enter into the kingdom of Godhead. After this, such fortunate living entities need not come again within the occasional material creation. But those who cannot catch the constitutional truth are again merged into the Mahatattva at the time of the annihilation of the material creation. When the creation is again set up, this Mahatattva is again let loose. This Mahatattva contains all the ingredients of the material manifestations, including the conditioned souls. Primarily, this Mahatattva is divided into 16 parts, namely the 5 gross material elements and the 11 working instruments or senses. It is like the cloud in the clear sky. In the spiritual sky, the effulgence of Brahman is spread all around, and the whole system is dazzling in the spiritual light. The Mahatattva is assembled in some corner of the vast, unlimited spiritual sky, and the part which is thus covered by the Mahatattva is called the material sky. This part of the spiritual sky, called the Mahatattva, is only an insignificant portion of the whole spiritual sky, and within this Mahatattva there are innumerable universes. All these universes are collectively produced by the Karanodakasai Vishnu, called also the Mahavishnu, who simply throws his glance to impregnate the material sky. Text 2. A part of the Purusha lies down within the water of the universe. From the navel lake of his body sprouts a lotus stem, and from the lotus flower atop this stem, Brahma, the master of all engineers in the universe, becomes manifest. Purport. The first Purusha is the Karanodakasai Vishnu. From his skin holes innumerable universes have sprung up. In each and every universe the Purusha enters as the Garbhodakasai Vishnu. He is lying within the half of the universe which is full with the water of his body, and from the navel of Garbhodakasai Vishnu has sprung the stem of the lotus flower, the birthplace of Brahma, who is the father of all living beings, and the master of all the demigod engineers engaged in the perfect design and working of the universal order. Within the stem of the lotus there are 14 divisions of planetary systems, and the earthly planets are situated in the middle. Upwards there are other, better planetary systems, and the topmost system is called Brahmaloka or Satyaloka. Downwards from the earthly planetary system, there are 7 lower planetary systems inhabited by the Ashuras and similar other materialistic living beings. From Garbhodakasai Vishnu, there is expansion of the Ksirodakasai Vishnu, who is the collective Paramatma of all living beings. He is called Hari, and from him all incarnations within the universe are expanded. Therefore, the conclusion is that the Purusha Avatara is manifested in 3 features. First, the Karanodakasai, who creates aggregate material ingredients in the Mahatattva. Second, the Garbhodakasai, who enters in each and every universe. And third, the Ksirodakasai Vishnu, who is the Paramatma of every material object, organic or inorganic. One who knows these plenary features of the personality of Godhead knows Godhead properly, and thus the knower becomes freed from the material conditions of birth, death, old age, and disease, as it is confirmed in Bhagavad Gita. In this sloka, the subject matter of Mahavishnu is summarized. The Mahavishnu lies down in some part of the spiritual sky by his own free will. Thus he lies on the ocean of Karana, from where he glances over his material nature, and the Mahatattva is at once created. Thus electrified by the power of the Lord, the material nature at once creates innumerable universes, just as in due course a tree decorates itself with innumerable grown fruits. The seed of the tree is sown by the cultivator, and the tree or creeper in due course becomes manifested with so many fruits. Nothing can take place without a cause. The Karana ocean is therefore called the causal ocean. Karana means causal. We should not foolishly accept the atheistic theory of creation. The description of the atheist is given in the Bhagavad Gita. The atheist does not believe in the Creator, but he cannot give a good theory to explain the creation. Material nature has no power to create without the power of the Purusha, just as a Prakriti, or woman, cannot produce a child without the connection of a Purusha, or man. The Purusha impregnates and the Prakriti delivers. We should not expect milk from the fleshy bags on the neck of a goat, although they look like breastly nipples. Similarly, we should not expect any creative power from the material ingredients. We must believe in the power of the Purusha, who impregnates Prakriti, or nature. Because the Lord wished to lie down in meditation, the material energy created innumerable universes at once. In each of them the Lord lay down, and thus all the planets and the different paraphernalia were created at once, by the will of the Lord. The Lord has unlimited potencies, and thus he can act as he likes by perfect planning, although personally he has nothing to do. No one is greater than or equal to him. That is the verdict of the Vedas. Text 3. It is believed that all the universal planetary systems are situated on the extensive body of the Purusha, but he has nothing to do with the created material ingredients. His body is eternally in spiritual existence par excellence. Purport. The conception of the Virat Rupa or Vishvarupa of the Supreme Absolute Truth is especially meant for the neophyte who can hardly think of the transcendental form of the personality of Godhead. To him a form means something of this material world, and therefore an opposite conception of the Absolute is necessary in the beginning to concentrate the mind on the power extension of the Lord. As stated above, the Lord extends his potency in the form of the Mahatattva, which includes all material ingredients. The extension of power by the Lord and the Lord himself personally are one in one sense, but at the same time the Mahatattva is different from the Lord. Therefore the potency of the Lord and the Lord are simultaneously different and non-different. The conception of the Virat Rupa, especially for the impersonalist, is thus non-different from the eternal form of the Lord. This eternal form of the Lord exists prior to the creation of the Mahatattva, and it is stressed here that the eternal form of the Lord is par excellence spiritual or transcendental to the modes of material nature. The very same transcendental form of the Lord is manifested by his internal potency, and the formation of his multifarious manifestations of incarnations is always of the same transcendental quality, without any touch of the Mahatattva. Text 4. The devotees with their perfect eyes see the transcendental form of the Purusha, who has thousands of legs, thighs, arms, and faces, all extraordinary. In that body there are thousands of heads, ears, eyes, and noses. They are decorated with thousands of helmets and glowing earrings, and are adorned with garlands. Purport. With our present materialized senses, we cannot perceive anything of the transcendental Lord. Our present senses are to be rectified by the process of devotional service, and then the Lord himself becomes revealed to us. In the Bhagavad Gita, it is confirmed that the transcendental Lord can be perceived only by pure devotional service. So it is confirmed in the Vedas that only devotional service can lead one to the side of the Lord, and that only devotional service can reveal him. In the Brahma Samhita also, it is said that the Lord is always visible to the devotees, whose eyes have been anointed with the tinge of devotional service. So we have to take information of the transcendental form of the Lord from persons who have actually seen him with perfect eyes, smeared with devotional service. In the material world also, we do not always see things with our own eyes. We sometimes see through the experience of those who have actually seen or done things. If that is the process for experiencing a mundane object, it is more perfectly applicable in matters transcendental. So only with patience and perseverance can we realize the transcendental subject matter regarding the absolute truth and his different forms. He is formless to the neophytes, but he is in transcendental form to the expert servitor. Text 5. This form, the second manifestation of the Purusha, is the source and indestructible seed of multifarious incarnations within the universe. From the particles and portions of this form, different living entities like demigods, men, and others are created. Purport. The Purusha, after creating innumerable universes in the Mahatattva, entered in each of them as the second Purusha, Garbhodakashayi Vishnu. When he saw that within the universe there was only darkness and space, without a resting place, he filled half of the universe with water from his own perspiration, and laid himself down on the same water. This water is called Garbhodaka. Then from his navel the stem of the lotus flower sprouted, and on the flower petals the birth of Brahma, or the master engineer of the universal plan, took place. Brahma became the engineer of the universe, and the Lord himself took charge of the maintenance of the universe as Vishnu. Brahma was generated from Rajoguna of Prakriti, or the mode of passion in nature, and Vishnu became the Lord of the mode of goodness. Vishnu, being transcendental to all the modes, is always aloof from materialistic affection. This has already been explained. From Brahma there is Rudra, Shiva, who is in charge of the mode of ignorance or darkness. He destroys the whole creation by the will of the Lord. Therefore all three, namely Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva, are incarnations of the Garbhodakashayi Vishnu. From Brahma, the other demigods like Daksha, Marishi, Manu, and many others become incarnated to generate living entities within the universe. This Garbhodakashayi Vishnu is glorified in the Vedas in the hymns of Garbhastuti, which begin with the description of the Lord as having thousands of heads, etc. The Garbhodakashayi Vishnu is the Lord of the universe, and although he appears to be lying within the universe, he is always transcendental. This also has already been explained. The Vishnu, who is the plenary portion of the Garbhodakashayi Vishnu, is the supersoul of the universal life, and he is known as the maintainer of the universe, or Ksirodakashayi Vishnu. So the three features of the original Purusha are thus understood, and all the incarnations within the universe are emanations from this Ksirodakashayi Vishnu. In different millennia there are different incarnations, and they are innumerable, although some of them are very prominent, such as Matsya, Kurma, Varaha, Rama, Narsimha, Vamana, and many others. These incarnations are called Leela incarnations. Then there are qualitative incarnations such as Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva or Rudra, who take charge of the different modes of material nature. Lord Vishnu is non-different from the personality of Godhead. Lord Shiva is in the marginal position between the personality of Godhead and the living entities, or jivas. Brahma is always a jiva tattva. The highest pious living being, or the greatest devotee of the Lord, is empowered with the potency of the Lord for creation, and he is called Brahma. His power is like the power of the sun reflected in valuable stones and jewels. When there is no such living being to take charge of the post of Brahma, the Lord himself becomes a Brahma and takes charge of the post. Lord Shiva is not an ordinary living being. He is the plenary portion of the Lord, but because Lord Shiva is in direct touch with material nature, he is not exactly in the same transcendental position as Lord Vishnu. The difference is like that between milk and curd. Curd is nothing but milk, and yet it cannot be used in place of milk. The next incarnations are the Manus. Within one day's duration of the life of Brahma, which is calculated by our solar year as 4,300,000 times 1,000 years, there are 14 Manus. Therefore, there are 420 Manus in 1 month of Brahma, and 5,040 Manus in 1 year of Brahma. Brahma lives for 100 years of this age, and therefore there are 5,040 times 100, or 504,000 Manus in the duration of Brahma's life. There are innumerable universes, with one Brahma in each of them, and all of them are created and annihilated during the breathing time of the Purusha. Therefore one can simply imagine how many millions of Manus there are during one breath of the Purusha. The Manus who are prominent within this universe are as follows: Yajna as Svayambhuva Manu, Vibhu as Svarochisa Manu, Satyasena as Uttama Manu, Hari as Tamasa Manu, Vaikuntha as Raivata Manu, Ajita as Chakshusha Manu, Vamana as Vivasvata Manu. The present age is under the Vivasvata Manu. Sharvabhauma as Savarni Manu, Rasabha as Daksha Savarni Manu, Vishvaksena as Brahma Savarni Manu, Dharmasetu as Dharma Savarni Manu, Sudama as Rudra Savarni Manu, Yogeshvara as Deva Savarni Manu, and Berhadbanu as Indra Savarni Manu. These are the names of one set of 14 Manus, covering 4,300,000,000 solar years as described above. Then there are the Yuga-avataras, or the incarnations of the millennia. The Yugas are known as Satya Yuga, Treta Yuga, Dvapara Yuga, and Kali Yuga. The incarnations of each yuga are of different color. The colors are white, red, black, and yellow. In the Dvapara Yuga, Lord Krishna in black color appeared, and in the Kali Yuga, Lord Chaitanya in yellow color appeared. So all the incarnations of the Lord are mentioned in the revealed scriptures. There is no scope for an impostor to become an incarnation, for an incarnation must be mentioned in the Shastras. An incarnation does not declare himself to be an incarnation of the Lord, but great sages agree by the symptoms mentioned in the revealed scriptures. The features of the incarnation and the particular type of mission which he has to execute are mentioned in the revealed scriptures. Apart from the direct incarnations, there are innumerable empowered incarnations. They are also mentioned in the revealed scriptures. Such incarnations are directly as well as indirectly empowered. When they are directly empowered, they are called incarnations, but when they are indirectly empowered, they are called vibhutis. Directly empowered incarnations are the Kumaras, Narada, Pirthu, Shesha, Ananta, etc. As far as vibhutis are concerned, they are very explicitly described in the Bhagavad Gita in the Vibhuti Yoga chapter. And for all these different types of incarnations, the fountainhead is the Garbhodakashayi Vishnu. Text 6. First of all, in the beginning of creation, there were the four unmarried sons of Brahma, the Kumaras, who, being situated in a vow of celibacy, underwent severe austerities for realization of the Absolute Truth. Purport. The creation of the material world is affected, maintained, and then again annihilated at certain intervals, so there are different names of the creations in terms of the particular types of Brahma, the father of the living beings in the creation. The Kumaras, as above mentioned, appeared in the Kumara creation of the material world, and to teach us the process of Brahman realization, they underwent a severe type of disciplinary action as bachelors. These Kumaras are empowered incarnations, and before executing the severe type of disciplinary actions, all of them became qualified Brahmanas. This example suggests that one must first acquire the qualifications of a Brahmana, not simply by birth, but also by quality, and then one can undergo the process of Brahman realization. Text 7. The supreme enjoyer of all sacrifices accepted the incarnation of a boar, the second incarnation, and for the welfare of the earth he lifted the earth from the nether regions of the universe. Purport. The indication is that for each and every incarnation of the personality of Godhead, the particular function executed is also mentioned. There cannot be any incarnation without a particular function, and such functions are always extraordinary. They are impossible for any living being to perform. The incarnation of the boar was to take the earth out of Pluto's region of filthy matter. Picking up something from a filthy place is done by a boar, and the all-powerful personality of Godhead displayed this wonder to the Asuras, who had hidden the earth in such a filthy place. There is nothing impossible for the personality of Godhead, and although he played the part of a boar, by the devotees he is worshipped, staying always in transcendence. Text 8. In the millennium of the Rishis, the personality of Godhead accepted the third empowered incarnation in the form of Devarshi Narada, who is a great sage among the demigods. He collected expositions of the Vedas, which deal with devotional service and which inspire non-fruitive action. Purport. The great Rishi Narada, who is an empowered incarnation of the personality of Godhead, propagates devotional service all over the universe. All great devotees of the Lord all over the universe and in different planets and species of life are his disciples. Srila Vyasadeva, the compiler of the Srimad Bhagavatam, is also one of his disciples. Narada is the author of Narada Pancharatra, which is the exposition of the Vedas particularly for the devotional service of the Lord. This Narada Pancharatra trains the karmis, or the fruitive workers, to achieve liberation from the bondage of fruitive work. The conditioned souls are mostly attractive by fruitive work because they want to enjoy life by the sweat of their own brows. The whole universe is full of fruitive workers in all species of life. The fruitive works include all kinds of economic development plans, but the law of nature provides that every action has its resultant reaction, and the performer of the work is bound up by such reactions, good or bad. The reaction of good work is comparative material prosperity, whereas the reaction of bad work is comparative material distress. But material conditions, either in so-called happiness or in so-called distress, are all meant ultimately for distress only. Foolish materialists have no information of how to obtain eternal happiness in the unconditional state. Sri Narada informs these foolish fruitive workers how to realize the reality of happiness. He gives direction to the diseased men of the world how one's present engagement can lead one to the path of spiritual emancipation. The physician directs the patient to take treated milk in the form of curd for his sufferings from indigestion due to his taking another milk preparation. So the cause of the disease and the remedy of the disease may be the same, but it must be treated by an expert physician like Narada. The Bhagavad Gita also gives the same solution of serving the Lord by the fruits of one's labor. That will lead one to the path of Naishkarmya, or liberation. Text 9. In the fourth incarnation, the Lord became Nara and Narayana, the twin sons of the wife of King Dharma. Thus he undertook severe and exemplary penances to control the senses. Purport. As King Rishabha advised his sons, tapasya, or voluntary acceptance of penance for realization of the transcendence, is the only duty of the human being. It was so done by the Lord himself in an exemplary manner to teach us. The Lord is very kind to the forgetful souls. He therefore comes himself and leaves behind necessary instructions, and also sends his good sons as representatives to call all the conditioned souls back to Godhead. Recently, within the memory of everyone, Lord Chaitanya also appeared for the same purpose, to show special favor to fallen souls of this age of iron industry. The incarnation of Narayana is worshipped still at Badari Narayana on the range of the Himalayas. Text 10. The fifth incarnation, named Lord Kapila, is foremost among perfected beings. He gave an exposition of the creative elements and metaphysics to Ashuri Brahmana, for in course of time this knowledge had been lost. Purport. The sum total of the creative elements is 24 in all. Each and every one of them is explicitly explained in the system of Sankhya philosophy. Sankhya philosophy is generally called metaphysics by the European scholars. The etymological meaning of Sankhya is that which explains very lucidly by analysis of the material elements. This was done for the first time by Lord Kapila, who is said herein to be the fifth in the line of incarnations. Text 11. The sixth incarnation of the Purusha was the son of the sage Atri. He was born from the womb of Anasuya, who prayed for an incarnation. He spoke on the subject of transcendence to Alarka, Prahlada, and others, Yadu, Hahaya, etc. Purport. The Lord incarnated himself as Dattatreya, the son of Rishi Atri and Anasuya. The history of the birth of Dattatreya as an incarnation of the Lord is mentioned in the Brahmanda Purana in connection with the story of the devoted wife. It is said there that Anasuya, the wife of Rishi Atri, prayed before the Lords Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva as follows. My lords, if you are pleased with me, and if you desire me to ask from you some sort of blessings, then I pray that you combine together to become my son. This was accepted by the lords, and as Dattatreya, the Lord expounded the philosophy of the spirit soul, and especially instructed Alarka, Prahlada, Yadu, Hahaya, etc. Text 12. The seventh incarnation was Yajna, the son of Prajapati Ruchi and his wife Akuti. He controlled the period during the change of Svayambhuva Manu and was assisted by demigods such as his son Yama. Purport. The administrative posts occupied by the demigods for maintaining the regulations of the material world are offered to the highly elevated, pious living beings. When there is a scarcity of such pious living beings, the Lord incarnates himself as Brahma, Prajapati, Indra, etc., and takes up the charge. During the period of Svayambhavu Manu, the present period is of Vaivasvata Manu, there was no suitable living being who could occupy the post of Indra, the king of the Indraloka, heaven planet. The Lord himself at that time became Indra. Assisted by his own sons like Yama and other demigods, Lord Yajna ruled the administration of the universal affairs. Text 13. The eighth incarnation was King Rishabha, son of King Nabi, and his wife Merudevi. In this incarnation, the Lord showed the path of perfection, which is followed by those who have fully controlled their senses and who are honored by all orders of life. Purport. The society of human beings is naturally divided into 8 by orders and statuses of life. The 4 divisions of occupational and 4 divisions of cultural advancement. The intelligent class, the administrative class, the productive class, and the laborer class are the 4 divisions of occupation. and the student life, the householder's life, retired life, and renounced life are the four statuses of cultural advancement towards the path of spiritual realization. Out of these, the renounced order of life, or the order of sannyasa, is considered the highest of all, and a sannyasi is constitutionally the spiritual master for all the orders and divisions. In the sannyasa order also, there are four stages of upliftment toward perfection. These stages are called Kutishaka, Bahudaka, Parivrajacacharya, and Paramahamsa. The Paramahamsa stage of life is the highest stage of perfection. This order of life is respected by all others. Maharaja Rishabha, the son of King Nabi and Maradevi, was an incarnation of the Lord, and he instructed his sons to follow the path of perfection by tapasya, which sanctifies one's existence and enables one to attain the stage of spiritual happiness, which is eternal and ever increasing. Every living being is searching after happiness, but no one knows where eternal and unlimited happiness is obtainable. Foolish men seek after material sense pleasure as a substitute for real happiness, but such foolish men forget that temporary so-called happiness, derived from sense pleasures, is also enjoyed by the dogs and hogs. No animal, bird, or beast is bereft of this sense pleasure. In every species of life, including the human form of life, such happiness is immensely obtainable. The human form of life, however, is not meant for such cheap happiness. The human life is meant for attaining eternal and unlimited happiness by spiritual realization. This spiritual realization is obtained by tapasya, or undergoing voluntarily the path of penance and abstinence from material pleasure. Those who have been trained for abstinence in material pleasures are called dhira, or men undisturbed by the senses. Only these dhiras can accept the orders of sannyasa, and they can gradually rise to the status of the paramahamsa, which is adored by all members of society. King Risabha propagated this mission, and at the last stage he became completely aloof from the material bodily needs, which is a rare stage not to be imitated by foolish men, but to be worshipped by all. Text 14. O Brahmanas, in the ninth incarnation, the Lord, prayed for by the sages, accepted the body of a king, Pirthu, who cultivated the land to yield various produces, and for that reason the earth was beautiful and attractive. Purport. Before the advent of King Pirthu, there was great havoc of maladministration due to the vicious life of the previous king, the father of Maharaja Pirthu. The intelligent class of men, namely the sages and the Brahmanas, not only prayed for the Lord to come down, but also dethroned the previous king. It is the duty of the king to be pious, and thus look after the all-around welfare of the citizens. Whenever there is some negligence on the part of the king in discharging his duty, the intelligent class of men must dethrone him. The intelligent class of men, however, do not occupy the royal throne, because they have much more important duties for the welfare of the public. Instead of occupying the royal throne, they prayed for the incarnation of the Lord, and the Lord came as Maharaja Pirthu. Real intelligent men, or qualified Brahmanas, never aspire for political posts. Maharaja Pirthu excavated many produces from the earth, and thus not only did the citizens become happy to have such a good king, but the complete site of the earth also became beautiful and attractive. Text 15. When there was a complete inundation after the period of the Chakshusha Manu, and the whole world was deep within water, the Lord accepted the form of a fish and protected Vaivasvata Manu, keeping him up on a boat. Purport. According to Sripada Sridhara Swami, the original commentator on the Bhagavatam, there is not always a devastation after the change of every Manu, and yet this inundation after the period of Chakshusha Manu took place in order to show some wonders to Satyavrata, but Sri Jiva Goswami has given definite proofs from authoritative scriptures like Vishnu Dharmatara, Markandeya Purana, Harivamsha, etc., that there is always a devastation after the end of each and every Manu. Srila Visvanatha Chakravarti has also supported Srila Jiva Goswami, and he, Sri Chakravarti, has also quoted from Bhagavatamrita about this inundation after each Manu. Apart from this, the Lord, in order to show special favor to Satyavrata, a devotee of the Lord in this particular period, incarnated himself. Text 16. The 11th incarnation of the Lord took the form of a tortoise whose shell served as a pivot for the Mandarachala hill, which was being used as a churning rod by the theists and atheists of the universe. Purport. Once both the atheist and the theist were engaged in producing a nectar from the sea so that all of them could become deathless by drinking it. At that time the Mandarachala hill was used as the churning rod, and the shell of Lord Tortoise, the incarnation of Godhead, became the resting place, pivot of the hill in the seawater. Text 17. In the 12th incarnation, the Lord appeared as Dhanvantari, and in the 13th he allured the atheist by the charming beauty of a woman, and gave nectar to the demigods to drink. Text 18. In the 14th incarnation, the Lord appeared as Narasimha, and bifurcated the strong body of the atheist Hiranyakasipu with his nails, just as a carpenter pierces cane. Text 19. In the 15th incarnation, the Lord assumed the form of a dwarf, Brahmana Vamana, and visited the arena of sacrifice arranged by Maharaja Bali. Although at heart he was willing to regain the kingdom of the 3 planetary systems, he simply asked for a donation of 3 steps of land. Purport. The Almighty God can bestow upon anyone the kingdom of the universe from a very small beginning, and similarly he can take away the kingdom of the universe on the plea of begging a small piece of land. Text 20. In the 16th incarnation of the Godhead, the Lord, as Bhagapati, annihilated the administrative class, Kshatriyas, 21 times, being angry with them because of their rebellion against the Brahmanas, the intelligent class. Purport. The Kshatriyas, or the administrative class of men, are expected to rule the planet by the direction of the intelligent class of men, who give direction to the rulers in terms of the standard Shastras, or the books of revealed knowledge. The rulers carry on the administration according to that direction. Whenever there is disobedience on the part of the Kshatriyas, or the administrative class, against the orders of the learned and intelligent Brahmanas, the administrators are removed by force from the posts, and arrangement is made for better administration. Text 21. Thereafter, in the 17th incarnation of Godhead, Sri Vyasadeva appeared in the womb of Satyavati through Parasharamuni, and he divided the one Veda into several branches and sub-branches, seeing that the people in general were less intelligent. Purport. Originally the Veda is one, but Srila Vyasadeva divided the original Veda into 4, namely Sama, Yajur, Rig, Atharva, and then again they were explained in different branches, like the Puranas and the Mahabharata. Vedic language and the subject matter are very different for ordinary men. They are understood by the highly intelligent and self-realized Brahmanas. But the present age of Kali is full of ignorant men. Even those who are born by a Brahmana father are in the present age no better than the Sudras or the women. The twice-born men, namely the Brahmanas, Kshatriyas, and Vaishyas, are expected to undergo a cultural purificatory process known as samskaras, but because of the bad influence of the present age, the so-called members of the Brahmana and other high-order families are no longer highly cultured. They are called the Dvija Bandhus, or the friends and family members of the twice-born. But these Dvijabandhus are classified amongst the Sudras and the women. Srila Vyasadeva divided the Vedas into various branches and sub-branches for the sake of the less intelligent classes, like the Dvijabandhus, Sudras, and women. Text 22. In the 18th incarnation, the Lord appeared as King Rama. In order to perform some pleasing work for the demigods, he exhibited superhuman powers by controlling the Indian Ocean and then killing the atheist king Ravana, who was on the other side of the sea. Purport: the personality of Godhead, Sri Rama, assumed the form of a human being and appeared on the earth for the purpose of doing some pleasing work for the demigods or the administrative personalities to maintain the order of the universe. Sometimes great demons and atheists like Ravana and Hiranyaksipu and many others become very famous due to advancing material civilization by the help of material science and other activities with the spirit of challenging the established order of the Lord. For example, the attempt to fly to other planets by material means is a challenge to the established order. The conditions of each and every planet are different, and different classes of human beings are accommodated there for particular purposes mentioned in the codes of the Lord. But puffed up by tiny success in material advancement, sometimes the godless materialists challenge the existence of God. Ravana was one of them, and he wanted to deport ordinary men to the planet of Indra, heaven, by material means, without consideration of the necessary qualifications. He wanted a staircase to be built up directly reaching the heavenly planet, so that people might not be required to undergo the routine of pious work necessary to enter the planet. He also wanted to perform other acts against the established rule of the Lord. He even challenged the authority of Sri Rama, the personality of Godhead, and kidnapped his wife, Sita. Of course, Lord Rama came to chastise this atheist, answering the prayer and desire of the demigods. He therefore took up the challenge of Ravana, and the complete activity is the subject matter of the Ramayana. Because Lord Ramachandra was the personality of Godhead, he exhibited superhuman activities which no human being, including the materially advanced Ravana, could perform. Lord Ramachandra prepared a royal road on the Indian Ocean with stones that floated on the water. The modern scientists have done research in the area of weightlessness, but it is not possible to bring in weightlessness anywhere and everywhere. But because weightlessness is the creation of the Lord by which he can make the gigantic planets fly and float in the air, he made the stones even within the earth to be weightless, and prepared a stone bridge on the sea without any supporting pillar. That is the display of the power of God. Text 23. In the 19th and 20th incarnations, the Lord advented himself as Lord Balarama and Lord Krishna in the family of Virsni, the Yadu dynasty, and by so doing he removed the burden of the world. Purport: the specific mention of the word Bhagavan in this text indicates that Balarama and Krishna are original forms of the Lord. This will be further explained later. Lord Krishna is not an incarnation of the Purusha, as we learned from the beginning of this chapter. He is directly the original personality of Godhead, and Balarama is the first plenary manifestation of the Lord. From Baladeva, the first phalanx of plenary expansions, Vasudeva, Sankarsana, Aniruddha, and Pradyumna expands. Lord Sri Krishna is Vasudeva, and Baladeva is Shankarsana. Text 24. Then, in the beginning of Kali Yuga, the Lord will appear as Lord Buddha, the son of Anjana, in the province of Gaya, just for the purpose of deluding those who are envious of the faithful theist. Purport: Lord Buddha, a powerful incarnation of the personality of Godhead, appeared in the province of Gaya, Bihar, as the son of Anjana, and he preached his own conception of non-violence and deprecated even the animal sacrifices sanctioned in the Vedas. At the time when Lord Buddha appeared, the people in general were atheistic and preferred animal flesh to anything else. On the plea of Vedic sacrifice, every place was practically turned into a slaughterhouse, and animal killing was indulged in unrestrictedly. Lord Buddha preached non-violence, taking pity on the poor animals. He preached that he did not believe in the tenets of the Vedas, and stressed the adverse psychological effects incurred by animal killing. Less intelligent men of the age of Kali, who had no faith in God, followed his principle, and for the time being they were trained in moral discipline and nonviolence, the preliminary steps for proceeding further on the path of God realization. He deluded the atheists because such atheists who followed his principles did not believe in God, but they kept their absolute faith in Lord Buddha, who himself was the incarnation of God. Thus the faithless people were made to believe in God in the form of Lord Buddha. That was the mercy of Lord Buddha. He made the faithless faithful to him. Killing of animals before the advent of Lord Buddha was the most prominent feature of the society. People claimed that these were Vedic sacrifices. When the Vedas are not accepted through the authoritative disciplic succession, the causal readers of the Vedas are misled by the flowery language of that system of knowledge. In the Bhagavad Gita, a comment has been made on such foolish scholars. Avipaschita, the foolish scholars of Vedic literature who do not care to receive the transcendental message through the transcendental realized sources of disciplic succession are sure to be bewildered. To them, the ritualistic ceremonies are considered to be all in all. They have no depth of knowledge. According to the Bhagavad Gita 15:15, Vedais cha sarvayar aham eva vedya. The whole system of the Vedas is to lead one gradually to the path of the Supreme Lord. The whole theme of Vedic literature is to know the Supreme Lord, the individual soul, the cosmic situation, and the relation between all these items. When the relation is known, the relative function begins, and as a result of such a function, the ultimate goal of life, or going back to Godhead, takes place in the easiest manner. Unfortunately, unauthorized scholars of the Vedas become captivated by the purificatory ceremonies only, and natural progress is thereby checked. To such bewildered persons of atheistic propensity, Lord Buddha is the emblem of theism. He therefore first of all wanted to check the habit of animal killing. The animal killers are dangerous elements on the path going back to Godhead. There are two types of animal killers. The soul is also sometimes called the animal or the living being. Therefore, both the slaughterer of animals and those who have lost their identity of soul are animal killers. Maharaja Parikshit said that only the animal killer cannot relish the transcendental message of the Supreme Lord. Therefore, if people are to be educated to the path of Godhead, they must be taught first and foremost to stop the process of animal killing, as above mentioned. It is nonsensical to say that animal killing has nothing to do with spiritual realization. By this dangerous theory, many so-called sannyasis have sprung up by the grace of Kali Yuga, who preach animal killing under the garb of the Vedas. The subject matter has already been discussed in the conversation between Lord Chaitanya and Maulana Chand Kazi Sahib. The animal sacrifice as stated in the Vedas is different from the unrestricted animal killing in the slaughterhouse, because the Asharas, or the so-called scholars of Vedic literatures, put forward the evidence of animal killing in the Vedas. Lord Buddha superficially denied the authority of the Vedas. This rejection of the Vedas by Lord Buddha was adopted in order to save people from the vice of animal killing, as well as to save the poor animals from the slaughtering process of their big brothers, who clamor for universal brotherhood, peace, justice, and equity. There is no justice when there is animal killing. Lord Buddha wanted to stop it completely, and therefore his cult of ahimsa was propagated not only in India, but also outside the country. Technically, Lord Buddha's philosophy is called atheistic because there is no acceptance of the Supreme Lord, and because that system of philosophy denied the authority of the Vedas. But that is an act of camouflage by the Lord. Lord Buddha is the incarnation of Godhead. As such, he is the original propounder of Vedic knowledge. He therefore cannot reject Vedic philosophy, but he rejected it outwardly because the Shuradvisa, or the demons who are always envious of the devotees of Godhead, try to support cow killing or animal killing from the pages of the Vedas, and this is now being done by the modernized sannyasis. Lord Buddha had to reject the authority of the Vedas altogether. This is simply technical, and had it not been so, he would not have been so accepted as the incarnation of Godhead, nor would he have been worshipped in the transcendental songs of the poet Jayadeva, who is a Vaishnava Acharya. Lord Buddha preached the preliminary principles of the Vedas in a manner suitable for the time being, and so also did Shankaracharya, to establish the authority of the Vedas. Therefore, both Lord Buddha and Acharya Shankara paved the path of theism, and Vaishnava Acharyas, specifically Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, led the people on the path towards a realization going back to Godhead. We are glad that people are taking interest in the nonviolent movement of Lord Buddha, but will they take the matter very seriously and close the animal slaughterhouses altogether? If not, there is no meaning to the Ahimsa cult. Srimad Bhagavatam was composed just prior to the beginning of the age of Kali, about 5,000 years ago, and Lord Buddha appeared about 2,600 years ago. Therefore, in the Srimad Bhagavatam, Lord Buddha is foretold. Such is the authority of this clear scripture. There are many such prophecies, and they are being fulfilled one after another. They will indicate the positive standing of Srimad Bhagavatam, which is without trace of mistake, illusion, cheating, and imperfection, which are the four flaws of all conditioned souls. The liberated souls are above these flaws. Therefore they can see and foretell things which are to take place on distant future dates. Text 25. Thereafter, at the conjunction of two yugas, the Lord of the creation will take his birth as the Kalki incarnation and become the son of Vishnu Yasha. At this time, the rulers of the earth will have degenerated into plunderers. Purport. There is another foretelling of the advent of Lord Kalki in the incarnation of Godhead. He is to appear at the conjunction of the two yugas, namely at the end of Kali Yuga and the beginning of Satya Yuga. The cycle of the four yugas, namely Satya, Treta, Dvapara, and Kali, rotates like the calendar months. The present Kali Yuga lasts 432,000 years, out of which we have passed only 5,000 years after the battle of Kurukshetra and the end of the regime of King Parikshit. So there are 420,000 years balance yet to be finished. Therefore, at the end of this period, the incarnation of Kalki will take place, as foretold in the Srimad Bhagavatam. The name of his father, Vishnu Yasa, a learned Brahmana, and the village Shampala are also mentioned. As above mentioned, all these foretellings will prove to be factual in chronological order. That is the authority of Srimad Bhagavatam. Text 26. O Brahmanas, the incarnations of the Lord are innumerable, like rivulets flowing from inexhaustible sources of water. Purport. The list of incarnations of the personality of Godhead given herein is not complete. It is only a partial view of all the incarnations. There are many others, such as Sri Hayagriva, Hari, Hamsa, Krishnagarbha, Vibhu, Satyasena, Vaikuntha, Sarvabhauma, Vishvaksena, Dharmasetu, Sudama, Yogesvara, Brihadbanu, and others of the bygone ages. Sri Prahlada Maharaja said in his prayer, "My Lord, you manifest as many incarnations as there are species of life, namely the aquatics, the vegetables, the reptiles, the birds, the beasts, the men, the demigods, etc., just for the maintenance of the faithful and the annihilation of the unfaithful. You advent yourself in this way in accordance with the necessity of the different yugas. In the Kali Yuga you have incarnated garbed as a devotee. This incarnation of the Lord in the Kali Yuga is Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. There are many other places, both in the Bhagavatam and in other scriptures, in which the incarnation of the Lord as Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is explicitly mentioned. In the Brahma Samhita also it is said indirectly that although there are many incarnations of the Lord, such as Rama, Narsimha, Varaha, Matsya, Kurma, and many others, the Lord himself sometimes incarnates in person. Lord Krishna and Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu are not therefore incarnations, but the original source of all other incarnations. This will be clearly explained in the next sloka. So the Lord is the inexhaustible source for innumerable incarnations, which are not always mentioned, but such incarnations are distinguished by specific extraordinary feats, which are impossible to be performed by any living being. That is the general test to identify an incarnation of the Lord, directly and indirectly empowered. Some incarnations mentioned above are almost plenary portions. For instance, the Kumaras are empowered with transcendental knowledge. Sri Narada is empowered with devotional service. Maharaja Prithu is an empowered incarnation with executive function. The Matsya incarnation is directly a plenary portion. So the innumerable incarnations of the Lord are manifested all over the universe as constantly, without cessation, as water flows constantly from waterfalls. Text 27. All the rishis, manus, demigods, and descendants of Manu, who are especially powerful, are plenary portions, or portions of the plenary portions of the Lord. This also includes the Prajapatis. Purport. Those who are comparatively less powerful are called vibhuti, and those who are comparatively more powerful are called avesha incarnations. Text 28. All of the above-mentioned incarnations are either plenary portions or portions of the plenary portions of the Lord, but Lord Sri Krishna is the original personality of Godhead. All of them appear on planets whenever there is a disturbance created by the atheists. The Lord incarnates to protect the theists. Purport. In this particular stanza, Lord Sri Krishna, the personality of Godhead, is distinguished from other incarnations. He is counted amongst the avatars, incarnations, because out of his causeless mercy the Lord descends from his transcendental abode. Avatara means one who descends. All the incarnations of the Lord, including the Lord himself, descend on the different planets of the material world, as also in different species of life, to fulfill particular missions. Sometimes he comes himself, and sometimes his different plenary portions or parts of the plenary portions, or his differentiated portions, directly or indirectly empowered by him, descend on this material world to execute certain specific functions. Originally, the Lord is full of all opulences, all prowess, all fame, all beauty, all knowledge, and all renunciation. When they are partly manifested through the plenary portions, or parts of the plenary portions, it should be noted that certain manifestations of his different powers are required for those particular functions. When in the room small electric bulbs are displayed, it does not mean that the electric powerhouse is limited by the small bulbs. The same powerhouse can supply power to operate large-scale industrial dynamos with greater volts. Similarly, the incarnations of the Lord display limited powers because so much power is needed at that particular time. For example, Lord Parashurama and Lord Narasimha displayed unusual opulence by killing the disobedient Kshatriyas 21 times and killing the greatly powerful atheist Hiranyakasipu.